Welcome back all. We'll continue with the next session of speakers, and I'm very pleased to introduce the next speaker from abroad, Professor Jan Kang. He is a Vice President and General Manager of the Clinical Application Business Unit at Neusoft Medical Systems. And previously, he used to be the Dean of the Biomedical and Information Engineering School at Northeastern University, which is a sister school of the TUE in Shenyang in China. And as such, he was a colleague of Bart. He opened many, many doors for Bart in China, without which much of Bart's work there would not have been possible. And as Bart put it, he is eternally grateful to you for this, and he is delighted that you were willing to travel all this way to present here today. Professor Kang.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. It's really my honor to be here today. It's for my friends' retirement ceremony. Actually, over the last 10 years, Bart has spent a lot of effort and a lot of contributions to our school. Actually, to my pleasure is I know that for today, our school have over 50 students in Netherlands over the last, I think, 12 years. 12 years this school. So I would like to show some pictures about Bart. This is my wife. This is in Tsinghua University. That's the new dean of our school. Okay, I would like to talk about the cloud arrow, and which is one of the impact by Bart. Actually, I came back to Neusoft after I finished my 7-year stint inside the school. 2 years ago, I decided to move back to the company. But I don't want to really go to some details about this way how to do it. I try to tell what we are thinking, what we are project the future to our understandings to the cloud arrow, especially in China. And the Bart will, I think, fully understand what's happening in China. It's really changing from time to time. And the new technology, how to use it in a very creative way. For me, it's really good. Good for me is I commute between the company and the school, and also the commute from Netherlands and China. I also a kind of international a player for the medical equipment standard. So I'm the IEC 60B chairman. And Newsoft is kind of one of the player in this ecosystem. My industrial team is right now is working on the cloud image platform plus the clinical application software. So this is what we understand for this cloud region. In China, there's a lot of changes here. It's just we're facing the different situations, including the concept change and the living styles. Especially also in China, it's really aging. Elder time is coming. Suddenly come to us. And for elders have one young and one baby. So we have to face the serious difficulties. Also, so we face the changes between the medical system and the health system merging together. 10 years ago in China, it's almost no health care system, only the medicine system. And nowadays, we are merging them together. And also the artificial intelligence is a very hot topic, and the central government spend a lot of investment on this type, this kind of things. So there will be a big chance for all the institutions, all the companies, all the individuals. So we just experienced the golden 40 years for the medical imaging. So nowadays we have experienced many changes. Suddenly, especially in China, you know, China is a kind of a skip, a middle step, one step to the future. So. When I came back from US to China in 2005, so I worked on the first generation intelligence. I made the software and then enabling our Newsoft CT sold to 114 countries. The trick is like this. We not only have the equipment, we have the intelligent software. For example, in the middle of this images, we develop a software instead of for the radiologist. We developed this software for the urologist. So that's enabling we sell our CT scanners to US. I skip this. I think everybody knows this in this room. So here is the in China we have this kind of different levels clinical application software. Right now, the major focus in the level 3. But in my opinion, so we still have a long way to go in the level 2. So we have many software in this level, something like this kind of technology. This is organ-oriented software. This is intelligent assistant. This is a virtual coloscopy. This is the image-guided surgery. And this is the QCT. This is we adapted the segmentation method to the surgery planning. And these are the software was over the last 10 years my team developed inside NeuSoft group, and continuously we want to put those kind of things on the cloud platform. These are the CFDA and the FDA and the CE certification. And this matrix is, I did the summary of the technology we accumulated over the last 10 years. And then we put all this technology in the new shape. It's NeuSoft Image Cloud. Put in there. This is the whole strategy for our NeuSoft cloud strategy. If you notice in the middle, this kind of intelligence is for the radiologist because they dealing with the different disease. But this for the clinical department. So we have the two kind of different intelligent assistant tools. And here we want to make more deeper for the clinical department to have the cloud-based application software. Here is our major ideas for the future. And we have the hybrid cloud architecture, which means we have the public cloud and the private cloud. This can be sold as a product. Can be sold, used as services. Here is our cloud product family. Here is for the hospital. We have the private cloud, and here is the public cloud. This is connecting the individuals. We also move this technology to our mobile terminals, something like this. And also we have this kind of supporting with any kind of the mobile devices. If you can scan this using your cell phone, you will see the images with cloud packs on your cell phone without install anything. Our cloud is a kind of, to my understanding, is the second generation IT technology. The first generation IT is dealing with the inside the institutions, and the second generation is do the connectings from the different institutions, which is even more important in China, because in China we have many low-level hospitals. They are scattered in the countryside. They need senior levels experts, but they do not have. And then using our cloud, we can connect them to the central hospital, and then they get the immediately assistant help from the central hospital. Then in China also we have the 3 different levels of hospitals. They facing the different kind of challenges. They have the dealing with the different difficulties for the disease. For our NeuSoft, we have a very special things, including the equipment and the platform, also the application software. So we are not like most other companies. Either they have the pure software, either have the hardware. So we based on this, we have our cloud supporting the specified clinical solutions. We have the platform. We can also have a clinical-oriented workflow. By doing this, we're using our cloud to connecting the senior level central hospital to the basic level in the countryside. And then we also do the screening with the aid of the AI technology. We also have a kind of the mechanisms because our software we can embedded some knowledge and thought here. Actually, this guy have a very dedicated measure on the SWI, and then we integrate his method into our software to develop the stroke-oriented solutions based on the cloud platform. This is, for example, we click one button, then and the software automatically to calculate the bleeding values. Also, we have this evaluation of the growing and also the micro bleeding points by the SWI quantitatively. And also we have the analysis for the vascular automatically by this software, and the only one button we can extract the vascular automatically, and also we adding the voice command between the junior level doctors and the senior level doctors. They have informal communications by this way. We were also adding some advanced methods to evaluate the speed of the blood inside the vasculars. And in summary, I think we have this kind of future-oriented technology shape. It's not all of them are new technology, but to my opinion, the companies can, using this platform, can carry and or supporting your method, and then we can share the IP. Something like we share the IP with the contributors, and then it's delivered to the end user. So this is a kind of open platform, and that's for today. A special thanks and invite Bart continue to join our Chinese ecosystem for the image analysis field. Thank you all.
Once again, thank you very much for honoring us with your presence today. And then we move back to a local speaker, Professor Marcel Brewer. He's a principal scientist at Philips Healthcare. More specifically, he's with the business unit Magnetic Resonance. And 8 years ago, to this very day, he became a part-time professor in Bart's group. And I'm very pleased to say also today is the day that his professorship is extended for years to come. Marcel, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Josien. Dear Bart, dear Hetty, colleagues, friends, it's a great pleasure to speak here. You asked me to speak about computational modeling and imaging, and that is, of course, not a coincidence, because actually the first project that we did together in your group, and also with the group of Professor Frans van der Vossen, the cardiovascular biomechanics group, involved a lot of computational modeling and imaging for the assessment of rupture risk of abdominal aortic aneurysms, and I will come back to that later on. Now, I do think that most of you will have a notion of what computational modeling is. Still, I would like to give a very short introduction about the what and why, the potential benefits in healthcare, the role of medical imaging, and also, of course, mentioning the VPH initiative that is ongoing in Europe. But the main part of this presentation will be a look back. And actually, it goes back much further than the date that I was appointed part-time professor in your group. It already dates back to 2001, because that was our first modeling and imaging project. Of course, I cannot discuss all projects, so I will only show a couple of highlights. And then at the end, some words about the path. I think the rather long path from research to clinical practice, and a future outlook into what is often called the digital patient. So what is computational modeling? I personally liked the definition of the NIH very much. It says that it's the use of computers to simulate and study the behavior of complex systems using mathematics, physics or biophysics, and computer science. And it can help to increase understanding of those complex systems, to accelerate discovery, develop and test new methods, predict performance or outcome of a system, or even to train to use those complex systems. And I think we all know these examples from our current life. No airplane nowadays is designed without computational aerodynamics. No pilot is stepping into a commercial plane without having had extensive training on a flight simulator, a large computational model of an airplane. And of course, we also know all the weather forecast. I think an example of a computational model with often a moderate success, let's put it like that. Going to the domain of healthcare, it's the study of multi-scale, multi-physics models that describe the human body as one complex system or parts of that body, including anatomy, physiology, and pathology, using information from multiple imaging modalities and other sources. And this can be at the population level, at an individual level, at the organ level, or even smaller levels. And there, medical imaging plays an important role. It supplies information about the anatomy of the organs that we want to study, about function, about tissue properties. And just to show a couple of examples of the potential benefits of using computational modeling, it can increase our understanding of normal and diseased structure and function. For example, the heart muscle has been studied extensively over the last 20 years, making models for anatomy, biomechanics, and electrophysiology. But also it can help to assist the design and the validation of medical devices. And actually, quite recently, an FDA guideline has been issued on what to report if you use modeling in device development. Examples are the development of vascular stents and coils to treat stenosis or aneurysms. Computational modeling can also help to train clinicians in using complex systems. And nowadays you can already purchase complex procedure simulators, like simulators of endoscopic interventions. And it can also, of course, in the end help to assist diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment. For example, the assessment of the risk of a plaque or an aneurysm. About 2000 in the European Union, the VPH, the Virtual Physiological Human Initiative, started. And that is an initiative that tries to develop the digital me, as it is often called, a digital representation of a patient, both for fundamental and for translational research, to in the end provide the citizens with affordable, personalized predictive care. And their modeling and imaging is really playing a large role using large collections of data. So I would now like to switch to the highlights. And it's a long list, and don't try to read this slide. It's too long to present today. I will try to say a few words on the ones indicated with the green bullets, and maybe in the end also, if I have some time left, the one with the red bullet. And let's start with the project where it all started with, and that's called Hemodin. This was the project where we studied the risk of abdominal aortic aneurysm rupture. It was a cooperation between the Erasmus Medical Center, Philips, and the TUI, and also the academic hospital in Maastricht and the Catharina Hospital here in Eindhoven were involved. An aneurysm, AAA, is a life-threatening dilation of the abdominal aorta, occurring mostly in elderly men, above 55. This is an example of such an aneurysm. It's a huge dilation of the aorta. The aorta normally has a diameter of about 3 centimeters, but such dilations can go up to 8 centimeters. And yeah, if they rupture, in most of the cases, it leads to direct death. Current practice is either open surgery or endovascular stent placement, and currently the decision is primarily based on the diameter. If the diameter is more than 5.5 centimeters or more than 200% of normal, then surgery may be scheduled. But for quite some patients, rupture already occurs for diameters below 5.5. And there are patients walking around with an aneurysm of 8 centimeters and it does not rupture. So this criterion was not a very good criterion, and the hypothesis in this project was that we can do better with hemodynamic modeling, modeling of the flow and modeling of the stress and strain in the vessel wall. And for that purpose, we have built up a complete chain from imaging to visualization of the modeling results. It started with 3D, CTA, and MRI. Then, of course, you have to do anatomical modeling, segmentation of all the relevant structures. That usually gives you labeled images or surfaces, so you have to translate it to what is called a volume mesh to do flow and mechanical simulations. And once you have done that, you, of course, also have to visualize the simulated stress or the simulated blood flow in a way that people can understand it. Just some examples of the imaging that we developed at that time. It was a combination of MR and CT. We needed MR primarily to look at the blood, even to look at the velocity of blood and to look at the structure of the thrombus in the aneurysm. We needed CT to also look at the calcifications because they may play a major role in stress and strain in the vessel wall. And this is just an illustration of how we did our segmentation. We started with vessel tracking, placed a little tube around the tracked vessels, and then inflated until we hit some image features to get the lumen segmentation, and we did that in a very similar way to get the outer wall segmentation. And once you have that, you can translate it into a volume mesh and you can do your simulations. We did a very small initial clinical evaluation together with the Catharina Hospital and Maastricht. 20 patients in each hospital, which were imaged all 4 times with CTA and MRA, and basically we studied if there is a relation between the modeling parameters and so the stress and strain in the vessel wall and the growth of the aneurysm, and we indeed found such a relation, which is a first indication of the potential benefits of this kind of modeling techniques. We also discovered that it's quite difficult to look at flow in 3D, so that is why we started a project on 3D flow visualization with PhD Roy van Pelt and coached by Anna Villanova and myself. And at that time, a new MRI technique came up called 4D flow. Instead of only measuring flow in one slice, we could now measure flow in a 3D volume as a function of time, where we had both anatomical and flow images, flow in XYZ. Great advantage over 2D, much more information, much more easy to plan. A bit challenging in terms of the imaging, but I won't speak about that today. But also challenging in terms of the processing and especially visualization. There's so much information in the flow data, so how to properly visualize that, and that was the purpose of that project. On the top left, a rather conventional 2D flow visualization where you have the vessel and you just take slices through the vessel where you measure flow over time and you show that in a graph or color code it. So that's the way we do it now. Top right, let's say rather useless 4D flow visualization, just showing the flow vectors over time, where the flow velocity is coded both in color and in the length of the vector. The bottom left, a conventional between brackets 4D flow visualization, particle tracing. Conventional between brackets because it's still not used a lot in clinical practice. And on the bottom right, all the fantastic illustrative 4D flow visualizations that Roy van Pelt developed. And I've just enlarged one of them just to show how beautiful they are. You can see that sort of particles are inserted. The shape of the particles changes with the flow velocity. They go from round to a more egg-shaped. You can see little trails such that you can follow them much better. And it really helps. You can see this is an aneurysm, a little aneurysm here in the aorta. This is the upper aorta, this is the heart. You can really very nicely see the flow patterns that are generated at that location. So moving on to the next project I would like to show. This was model-based brain segmentation. This was a cooperation between TUI, UMC Utrecht, the group of Max Viergever and Philips, in the IDII Institute. We looked at segmentation of brain structures for various diseases. Within Philips, we were especially interested in Alzheimer's disease, which usually starts with the accumulation of amyloids in the brain, which then leads to synaptic dysfunction and to neural injury. And at some time, it also leads to shrinkage, atrophy of brain tissue, and that is, of course, what we can measure with MRI. And together with Philips Research Hamburg, a model-based segmentation technique was developed, sort of a four-stage process where first the model is roughly placed in the images, then a rigid adaptation is done, then each of the structures can be finely adapted, and in the end there is even a flexible adaptation. And together with Utrecht, we benchmarked this method with respect to other methods. And for the insiders, we found dice coefficients of way above 95% and average errors lower than the MRI voxel resolution. And it turned out to be much faster and better reproducible than open source packages like FSL and FreeServer. So stepping to the next project, quite a different one, the digital radiation therapy patient, and now we're moving into the domain of radiotherapy planning of cancer, a cooperation between this university, Philips, Dutch Cancer Institute, Aarhus University, the Catholic University in Leuven, and a technical university in Athens. And within the TUI is again especially focused on visualization. The main purpose of this project was to build a complete digital radiotherapy pipeline with much more tumor tissue-specific radiation planning than is currently done in clinical practice, but also trying to better avoid damage of normal tissue using MRI only. And the purpose of the project here was especially to visualize all data involved, including its uncertainty. So we primarily focused on these two steps in the chain. Together with Philips, we replaced the CT part that is usually done by sort of pseudo-CT derived from MR, but I won't speak about that. Within the TU, we primarily focused on this whole chain of imaging, segmentation of the tumor tissue, segmentation of the organs at risk, and then the radiotherapy planning and estimation of the chance of success of the treatment of the tumor. And this was done by the always very cheerful PhD student Renate Raidu, and she did a fantastic job. She, for all of these steps, came up with new visualization techniques that also allowed us to look into the variation, the uncertainty in the data. Very nice project. So how then do we move all those techniques into clinical practice? And one thing that's always necessary if you want to introduce a new medical device, you need to have regulatory approval. And that will certainly also be true for modeling products. And the kind of approval that you need will depend very much on the clinical use. If it is primarily assistance for diagnosis of therapy, then it may not be needed to do a very extensive clinical trial. For example, at the FDA, you can apply for a so-called 510K, where you have to show that the device is safe and effective. But if you involve modeling in computer-based decision-making, you may have to do much more extensive clinical trials. But having said that, there are already quite some products on the market, actually, that use some form of modeling. Many products that use anatomical modeling for segmentation of different structures, either for diagnosis or for therapy guidance. Quite recently, company HeartFlow has introduced a flow modeling product that received 510K approval. It's called CT-FFR, flow, fractional flow reserve calculation, to assess the severity of stenosis. But also, for example, electromagnetic field modeling is used to study the heating of the body during imaging with magnetic resonance. And there are already also products that do some form of pharmacokinetical modeling to study the perfusion in organs, either using CT, MR, or ultrasound. But many others are still in the clinical research phase only. And I already mentioned it quite recently, a guideline document was issued by the Food and Drug Administration that describes how to properly describe your modeling if it is involved in an application for regulatory approval. So moving to my last slides. Nowadays you cannot go to a medical imaging conference without hitting a lot of papers which use words like big data, machine learning, deep learning. So I thought those terms should certainly be also in my presentation. Here they are. But of course I say it with a purpose. Especially deep learning with convolutional neural networks is showing great performance for segmentation of different structures. But the downside of it is that you have to use a lot of training data with reference segmentations. And that can be quite cumbersome or even impossible to obtain. And it's therefore that we started this project that has recently been approved for funding by the European Marie Curie program. It's called Open Ground Truth Network, OpenGTN. And in this project we will use MRI simulation to create large public image databases with ground truth segmentations, starting from very realistic anatomical models. And yeah, those images can then be used for optimization, validation, and benchmarking of algorithms. It is a project of 3 PhDs together with Philips Research Hamburg, starting the 1st of June. We still have to hire the PhDs, so I hope you allow me to make a bit of advertisement. We are now looking for excellent candidates. And we already actually used that in one of the former projects. This was a cooperation with the Erasmus Medical Center where we simulated carotid plaque. And this shows that we could do that very realistically. So this is a patient image of a carotid with plaque. This is the simulated image, and if you look along these lines, you can see that the intensity patterns are very, very similar. So we think that can have great promise for generating large databases. Okay, I would now like to step to my last slide, and this is maybe a bit large step. This is a slide I found on the internet, and I liked it a lot. I think it summarizes pretty well my view on the potential future of modeling and imaging. We are now collecting more and more data about the health situation of people, so that's usually indicated with big data. And we have to integrate that all, something I call integrative healthcare. And that will help us to develop the digital patient. We probably need a lot of machine learning to do so, and we have to make those patient models specific. So that's basically the digital me that already started in 2000 in the VPH community. And hopefully we can also use that to move more into the area of prevention and prediction prognosis. And I think there will be a major role for imaging and modeling in that area. And with that, I would like to conclude. I would thank you very much, Bart, for your excellent support during the years I was in your team and for the very many interesting discussions we have. We are roommates, and I've already heard that nothing's going to change. So I will see you next Thursday, and we just do as nothing has happened. Thank you.
Marcel, thank you very much. And then again, I can welcome a guest from abroad, although also a familiar face here. Dr. Marcus van Almsick, he works with Wolfram Research. He's a consultant with Wolfram Research in Germany. And Wolfram being the producer of Mathematica, it's obvious what his connection to Bart is. But moreover, he was also a PhD student of Bart, graduating in 2007.
Okay, well, first, Bart, thank you for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to speak. Secondly, I will not give an ordinary talk. I will not have slides, but I will demonstrate a real live program. So it's always some caveats coming along with that. Okay, here we go. Okay, Bart and I have a common passion together. Actually, it's my profession now, but it's Bart's passion, and it's a computer language, a computer software program called Mathematica, where I have now the privilege to be part of the team developing this software. And Today, well, this is, by the way, I quickly have to read the title because it's not my title. Bart gave it to me. Designing Image Analysis Algorithms in Mathematica Today. Mathematica is a program. Today is today, so this is very fresh. And I will quickly explain why we give this talk today. There's basically Bart had a very big imprint on this program. I'm not sure if he really knows. Because in 2007, Wolfram Research, the maker of Mathematica, decided to include image processing in the program, in the product, because beforehand it was just a computer system to do mathematics. We did use it here in our group. That basically was part of my assignment in Bart's group. But at that time, the company making this product decided to follow suit. And then the Director of Research and Development, Peter Overman, came all the way from Chicago to Eindhoven to basically consult Bart what to do. Because Bart had written a book, which was already on display here, Front-End Vision and Multiscale Imaging. And that book is written in Mathematica. And for all his impetus, for all his input into Mathematica, he was awarded the Wolfram Innovator Award in 2013. And now I will basically show you why he got this award and what his imprint on the program is. First of all, why does Bart use Mathematica? I think it's the ease of use. Because you don't really have to know that much about computation or implementing programs anymore. You can almost basically go with the flow. And that has come to an extreme nowadays that you can do what's called free-form input. You don't have to know the language anymore. You just type what you want. For example, apply a gradient filter to the test image with radius 6. You just type that in plain English, and then the program, hopefully, okay, I have to reconnect to the network. The network will, this is, the drawback. Okay, I can cheat here. I'll just, no, that's fine. I think I can do without. Then the program will automatically, I'll just skip these 3 lines, and the other ones I've pre-calculated, so it's no big deal. It will automatically convert this into Mathematica code and give you the result. So it will rewrite this into, let's stop this, into a command which would look like then like gradient filter of test image with radius 6. And then you do, the next one would have been an image adjust, oops, and so forth. So you can basically do programming in Mathematica without really knowing what's going on. And that is so easy and practical for teaching that we have done this here at the university in Eindhoven extensively. All the projects that Bart had assigned to his students were for the most part done in Mathematica. And just to show to what extent that works, I'll quickly like to demonstrate here just a few lines of code that I developed just last week with a high school student, Emma Young, in Boston. And she just did, at that age, 13 years of age, do a lung segmentation. So basically, she calculated the gradient of the image at a certain scale, knowing about scale space, then did a watershed segmentation. And at the end of the day, after these few lines of code, oops, you get this result. So that then is the segmentation that even a 13-year-old high school student can do in this program and develop algorithms as you go. So that's one part, I guess, of the bill. And the other thing now, and I'd just like to mention it because most people probably won't anticipate that, is that it also comes with data. So when you have Mathematica, all the data that comes with Wolfram Alpha, our data branch, is available to you, so you can ask in plain English, like brain areas associated to emotion. And it will automatically entitle all the areas that can be found, and I can visualize them. In this particular case, I visualize the amygdala in the center of the brain. I can then ask about properties of the amygdala in the brain by just calling up here properties and neuronal output, and it will tell you to what areas in the brain it connects to. I can have a connectivity graph of the amygdala, and I can highlight what's active under certain conditions. I can see what connections I have to the prefrontal cortex, where the reasoning is going on. I can look for the best pathways. So I can basically associate all the theoretical knowledge that we measure or modulate in Mathematica with data that's well established. So last but not least, here the flow diagram of the optimal flow from the amygdala to the spinal cord. So having said that, I now quickly relate to the algorithm or implementing algorithms in Mathematica. This is, to pay now a pun on the word today, not today, but yesterday. When I started in Bart's group, as I said, it was a system for computer algebra. So we did a lot of theoretical work as well in Mathematica. For example, in this particular case, part of my thesis, together with Remco Deutz, we calculated the propagation kernel of a line. So not what a drunken walker would do, where you get the Gaussian kernel as a propagation kernel, but one where you just alter directions, and this is what you get. You just move into a certain direction, and then you may change the direction, and as you walk along, changing direction, you also change location. And this is of somewhat importance if you want to calculate or anticipate the trajectories of arteries, of catheters, and so forth, because they usually tend to maintain direction. And then you can calculate theoretically completion field, that is like a force field that tells you when to connect line segments and when you don't, and then you can basically calculate and simulate that in Mathematica back then, when it was not really a computer algebra system for doing images. Nowadays, so now it's back to today, unfortunately, most of this is not necessary anymore. As Marcel pointed out, in the time of big data, you can switch off your brain. You just take a big chunk of data, run it through a neural network, and the neural network will do the learning for you to a certain degree. So what I have here is a neural network that was developed by these people in Japan, Sasaki, Isuka, Simusera, and et al. And they developed here a neural network, oops, that doesn't look good, that I can just load into Mathematica. I can build a little command around it that basically sends the data through the network. It just basically encodes the data correspondingly up front, and then presents the data as an image as output. And then what I could do is I can just take one of these images that is corrupted in the sense that the lines are not continuous, but your brain does a very good job in this case, seeing these circles or triangles or squares as one entity. And then basically this neural network has learned how to do this and automatically does a completion for you without doing all the heavy load of mathematics that we have done before. Now, I don't want to discard what we did before, because there's a big advantage what we have. We have parameters. We can tune these things. Parameters in a neural network always have to be learned from scratch, so they're not easily adjustable to different situations. But still, it works a long way in Mathematica. You can just put something in, and you can also do more delicate examples where you have here, for example, technical drawing that may be corrupted due to scanning or whatever, and then send it through the network, and you instantly get a good result. So, having said that, I think it's pretty clear, and as Marcel had pointed out already, neural networks is the game of today and tomorrow in image processing. And so I just thought I'd just give you a very quick run through how such a neural network is being trained in Mathematica. So initially, what you have to do is you have to load training data. Now this is a very small training data set. And it consists of very tiny images that belong to 10 categories, like horses, airplanes, cats, and so forth. And so basically we want to train here a network that can automatically recognize these 10 categories in small images being presented. So what I do here is I create a set of training data. I create a set of test data, just to verify if what I learned actually can be applied to new data. And then I have here a union of classes. So these are the classes that I'm looking for: airplane, automobile, bird, cat, and so forth. And well, as I said, there are 10 of them. And then you just go ahead and create a neural network. Now, a neural network, for those of you who don't know these things, are essentially functions that you fit, just like doing linear regression, things like that, except that it's structured like a brain, like a network of neurons, and the parameters of these fitting functions are the connections between the neurons. And essentially, you have not just maybe 2 or 3 parameters, but these networks can have millions of parameters, so it's a pretty daunting fitting exercise, which is then called well, the learning, basically. And in a sense, it's a fitting procedure called backpropagation in this particular case. So I just create here a very simple network that has a few layers of neurons where the image is being sent through. It tries to collect the features, and at the end of the day, it basically associates the activity to the 10 classes to 10 final neurons. In this case, only 4 are depicted, which then say, okay, the probability of finding this particular class is very likely. And when I do this in Mathematica, I would train this network on this data set. I have this network, the data set, and then I have to say what function or what loss function I'd like to optimize, because essentially at the end of the day, it's all an optimization process. And then I run this, and depending on what kind of hardware I have, it takes 20 minutes, so I'm not going to show it, as the talk would be over. Or I run it on a GPU, which would speed it up by a factor of 100. And then at the end of the day, since this is pre-calculated, you get a network, and then you can just run the network on an image. For example, I have here an image, and you just run it on it, it will tell me, yep, this is a ship. Or a whole sequence, this is an automobile, a frog. This looks like a bird, but actually it's a plane, so this is a misclassification, a bird, and a horse. So you can see, you learn something, and this is applicable through everything you can think of, be it recognizing cancer, malignant cells, benign cells, and so forth. And at the end of the day, you want to verify if all your training has been effective. And then at the end of the day, you could, for example, look at a confusion matrix like this that tells you if you have classified correctly or misclassified. All right, so this can be applied to all kinds of things. One problem I remember when I joined Bart's group, which was very much hip at that time, was image retrieval. So basically, when you have a text, you just have a word, a keyword that you type in, and then you can find this keyword in a text. If you have an image, and if you have not tagged the images that you have in your database, this becomes a daunting task. So here we have a database, and now we just run a network on this database to create so-called feature vectors. In a way, these are internal states of the network that encode the image. And then when I look for an image, I just take a similar image, what I'm looking for, encode the vector, look for the closest vector in the database, and just like tagging, I can extract then an image that looks like the input image. So here I have such basically a big network, which we use for what's called image identifier in Mathematica. And if I apply now this network, cut it off at a certain layer, it produces a huge feature vector. In this case, a vector of 1K numbers. I have a dog here, which creates basically a 1K vector. And if I now have a whole data set of these, and I encode the whole data set with these feature vectors, I can then create a nearest dog function, and that basically does the following. If I provide a dog, in this case, it's a golden retriever, then I'd like to basically get an image of a golden retriever from my database, and it automatically does so. And this works for any breed you put in there, even for mixes like a doodle here. You can retrieve images very easily. Okay, so where is the whole party going? Essentially, okay, this is now, unfortunately, well, I have a backup here. We have now a collection of networks. You don't have to train networks always from scratch because people have done that before. So we are compiling at Wolfram Research a huge network repository where you can basically call up networks for all kinds of tasks. And I'll just quickly show you one task. And that is here, for example, network for age estimation. Just import that. I apply it to an image of mine, which turned out to be pretty good because I get a very nice age of 44, and I can even calculate now the age probability. And this will essentially go into a function where we have not just find faces, but it will tell you the age of the person, it will tell you the sex of the person, the gender, it will tell you the mood of the person. So you can do all these kind of applications that are built into the software nowadays and that will be part of the next release. Another example here, facial features, just for the fun of it, recognizing the nose, the corners of the mouth, the eyes. Here, if I take Mona Lisa, it will give me 4, 5 key points and tell me where they are. Actually, well, it missed one eye here, not too good. Or I can play with it. I have here 2 images, one of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, just a minute before it worked. And anyway, you can then morph from one image to the next and see how the metrics of one person are imposed on the face of another person. Okay, you can do this the other way around. I'll just basically title this here Mathematica for Tonight. This is what's called Deep Dream. So that's more a game of playing with neural networks, because when you have a neural network that basically has to classify an image, what you can also do is, when you dream, essentially you tickle some neurons at an upper level and then send the excitation back to the front of the neural network, and it will generate images, pretty much like images as you dream in your sleep. And you can do this. The whole code is here in Mathematica. I'll just call up here the result. And then, for example, when you start with an image of a forest, all the associations that you have with the leaves and the tree or the trees themselves will bring up different pictures. And depending on where you do it in the network, you also get different images. So this, in a way, tells you what's being encoded. All right. So then maybe quickly, how do you implement these things in Mathematica? Well, you can just do a cloud deploy nowadays, which gives you a link, and then you can basically provide this service to the end user on the net. So if you were to have now a smartphone, please feel free to take this QR code. This will bring you to this particular website. And if you go to that website, you will see something. Well, since I don't have internet now, I just can show you what you get. You get a web page like this where you can upload an image, and then you can have different image effects like charcoal, embossing, or whatever. And all that is being done basically in this small code here in Mathematica. And you can do that with anything you have in Mathematica as you go. This is the same for a gradient filter. I'll skip that. Okay, I'll just now wrap up quickly. And I want to point out that we do still do mathematics. We have a very big function website. If you have ever questions regarding special functions, feel free to just call up functions.wolfram.com, and we will get any kind of variable knowledge that you can possibly want about the people who are associated with certain functions and so forth. And you may not know, but Bart hasn't been inactive. There is a Bart to Haar Romeny function now. In short, BTHR. It's a very elegant function. It involves a sum up to a certain order. It even has a tensor of rank 3, which is empirically determined. It depends on different particles that calculate p. So we have different entities here. We have a dimension, which is 2, and we have here an energy parameter k. That pretty much like nowadays in quantum gravity or also quantum mechanics, you have a dynamic that is a complex, driven by a complex vector here by the component e to the power of IKT. And if I were now to import this tensor, the BTHR tensor, I can basically see how that function looks like. Wait a minute, I have to enable. Here we go. And you see it renders a very nice rank 2 matrix of, 78 times 2 dimensions. And I expanded here to higher, more complicated functions. And you can see it's quite a complex, quite an impressive function that Bart has here. I can scroll and scroll and scroll. And one nice thing about Mathematica is that you can actually visualize these things. So I take the real part. We want to see the real Bart, not the imaginary one. So I take the real Bart, And I can see that, well, initially he consists of lines, and then essentially he evolves to somebody you can recognize, which happens to be Bart. Well, that basically concludes my talk today, except that I know we are now in for, I think, a lunch. So I also like to point out that the software will help you pick the right lunch and eat it. You can use image identify to see what's on your plate. So if I run this, it will automatically tell you this is a potato salad. And then you can go ahead and take this entity value, potato salads, or just potatoes, and do the calorie counts on your plate, and that will tell you that with this potato salad you are bound to take 156 calories. And then if you say smakelijk here in the Netherlands and you're not from the Netherlands, you can also use Mathematica and run it through the word translate, and it will tell you, tell you delicious, delightful, or mouth-watering. Thank you very much.